Hello, everyone. My name is Mikita Dementiev, and I'm a second year grad student in the Department of Material Science and Engineering. I am currently working in the lab under Dr. Robert J. Hickey, and currently I'm studying polymers. And what I want to talk to you today about is a book that essentially I feel has led me to the study of science, particularly physics in my undergrad. And before I start looking into it, I want to give you a brief biography of myself and in order to understand how this book comes into the picture. So I did my undergraduate studies in essentially the entirety of the state of California. So I did my first 2 years in a community college and the last 2 years in the University of California, Davis. I came to California to study specifically physics related subjects and mathematics. And essentially, what led me to choose physics, because physics is a very specific thing to study, was the book, which is The Universe in a Nutshell by Stephen Hawking. So, this book is the second book written by Stephen Hawking, first of which is called The Brief History of Time, and the second one is called The Universe in a Nutshell. The author, Stephen Hawking, why is he like how this book came into my life? It was a very interesting story. My father's friend bought this book and he tried to read it, and he said he couldn't foster the strength to read it. And he essentially gave like a couple of his books, including this one, to me, and I was like, wow, this book, not only does it look cool, it was like a fancy print of it with like a very fancy hardcover on it, but also it had a bunch of pictures. Like it had a bunch of pictures of a lot of things. And at the time that I received the book, I was maybe 15, 16 years old, and I was not that much into reading that time either. So seeing a bunch of science looking like things intrigued me very much. And also, given that at the time I also wasn't like a very good student, he called per se, because I did not spend as nearly as much time as I probably should have looking and like I don't know, studying basic subjects like mathematics and like I don't know, geography, sciences, because at the time we were bombarded with subjects and I did not want to deal with it. But I was given this book to read and I was like, okay, maybe if I'll start reading it, it's gonna get me into the groove of reading it and I will like what I see. And also, like, I wanted to be that type of person who would say, like, "Ooh, you couldn't read this book. I will read this book instead, and I'll show you that I am essentially better than you." Well, me in the back time would say things like that. So I did start reading the book, and the book essentially took me for a very interesting and very satisfying ride because what Stephen Hawking does, Stephen Hawking is a very good writer. He, even in his foreword, says that his goal is essentially to try to invite the readers and try to give the reader, not necessarily with any scientific background or any like hard mathematical background, an idea or ideas of, or I don't know, gauge some understanding in the reader of the things that are very cool about the sciences, like the cool facts about it. Um, and even starting with the first chapter, he is already starting to talk about the introduction to general or special relativity by Einstein, which also remembering that me at 15 or 16 years old barely has heard of an idea of relativity. I was a bit scared starting it, but as Stephen Hawking walks you through the idea of it, you, as a reader, with certain given time that is given to understand what is written, will comprehend of what Stephen Hawking is trying to say. Um, so yes, the best thing about this book is the Stephen Hawking's ability to explain hard subjects, hard language, and or hard scientific concepts in the way that is understandable for the people without any scientific background. That is why I like this book, and that's why this book gave me the idea of trying to do sciences in the future. Now, there are a lot of cool things that Stephen Hawking talks about in this book. There is a general theme of it throughout this book. As the title suggests, the universe in a nutshell, he's essentially trying to explain what the universe is, what it consists of, and what, yeah, just like what the universe is, what like the basics building blocks of it is. Not strictly of like the matter speaking, like atoms, quarks, or whatnot. He's starting to talk about two generally accepted theories of understanding our world, which is the general relativity and then the quantum mechanics. He essentially starts talking about what has been done before, like the history, a little bit of the history before, especially with like how he starts talking about the Einstein, about how people have measured the speed of light, what experiments were done in order to see whether the speed of light is very variant or not. He covers that in the first couple of chapters. Then he goes into more abstract ideas like time. What is time? And what can we do with it? Then he goes into the idea of the universe being this big bubble and how it emerged out of, well, essentially nothing, how it can possibly go back into nothing. He talks about the universe expansion. He talks about the Doppler effect that comes out of it and all that. And, throughout the years, ever since I was 15 or 16, maybe like a decade or decade and a half ago, I still remember this very cool image or a very cool fact that that the book gave me, which I still carry with me throughout my life, is that if you look back into our universe, back through time, uh, what you'll see is an image of a pair. Well, you'll see the universe being shown as a pair. And I'll show it to you here because the idea of it is just so mind blowing, but it just makes sense. And even like in the second chapter, as you can see, when he talks about the shape of time, you already can see the small pair with the clock in it. And he does talking about like what time really is with those trains, with the train racks, and he tries to roll parallels. And then he brings the idea of time not strictly being linear, which is already mind blowing because at the time, like in my 15, 16 year, all I knew is at the time, okay, it's linear. But then he brings in like the mathematics into the regular ideas of our day-to-day life, and it's just mind blowing what he does with the words and ideas that he has. And then he talks about the concept that he built on from the previous chapter, talking about the speed of light and how with that speed of light there are certain restrictions that we have on what space, quote unquote, we can see. And he gives this idea with this light cone saying like, okay, if you're here, you can only look as much far back spatially as much as the speed of light allows us to see. And then he brings in the idea of the universe expansion, or like the Big Bang, how it started. And if you combine the idea that if you're a viewer right at the top of this cone trying to look back into the universe or the space, you'll see the cone as you saw in the previous couple of pages. But then the space will begin to contract at some point because of the Big Bang. And the resulting shape that you see is the shape of a pear. Now, I've talked to my peers about it, like even like in grad school not too long ago, like about this fact, how cool it is. All they said like, "Ooh, it doesn't look like a pear," but it can look like an ice cream cone, which I sort of do see, but it always will be stuck with me as a pear because when I read this and I understood and I like saw that if indeed you look back in time, you could see a shape of a pear. Back in time into the space, you would see a shape of a pear. And as I understood it, I sat there in chills in in the fact that that made sense, that made sense to me, and that essentially just gave me a feeling of not only accomplishment but also the feeling that there's so much more out there that I don't know, but I can understand. You see, like the book here is essentially gave me a gateway into the sciences because this book let me it gave me an understanding, or like it gave me the feeling of the ability that I can understand things out there if I put enough effort into them. And that's why by the end of this book, when he talks about the abstract ideas of like Hawking radiation, like virtual particles, he does talk about it, but he also like walks you through it, that with enough effort, like with enough, I don't know, time of trying to understand things, you would be, well, when I was reading this, I would be able to understand complicated things out there and the realm of physics, chemistry, or whatever sciences are there. Um, for me, this book holds a very special place in my heart because, again, this book opened the brave new world of cool science that's out there. I mean, also given that in this book he also just picks the very like um the very grandeur, very great things that mankind has reached in understanding or has tried to reach an understanding. And this essentially, yeah, again, just gave me the look into the future and to the what I will be trying to pursue. And if you have not given a read to this of this book, I highly recommend it. I have recommended it to many people, including like my family and my closed ones. None of them have read it. So, if you're a science person, I will gladly recommend it to you because I feel like this is gonna give maybe not as high of an impression, but still a very good impression from this book. Anyway, I hope you got something from this video of me reviewing my one of my, well, if not the favorite book that talks about science. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to try to share with your friends and or smash a like on this video. And yeah, thank you.